and welcome to another episode of the Tar Heels Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Grant Sashary, bringing you all the latest news in UNC athletics, from football all the way down to lacrosse. Of course, we're going to mostly talk about football, baseball, and basketball, but the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is a university of excellence, not only in academics, but athletics as well. So we will try to make sure we include everybody in our coverage. But most of the coverage will be football, basketball, baseball, because that's where the eyeballs will be. But like I said, this is a university of excellence all around. So we're going to make sure to try to cover everybody. But today, and we are literally a day or two away from fall camp starting up, let's talk about the UNC DB room. And I really haven't done a position breakdown on the podcast. I've done it through articles. But the reason why I want to talk about this DB room today is because I feel like this is the best position group for UNC this season. I mean, it truly is. I mean, if you just look at each and every single position in the defensive back, from corner to nickelback to safety, I mean, it is a deep room. It really is. Just start off a corner. Thaddeus Dixon, guy who is an experienced player. He's played 4 years of college football. Right, 2 in junior college. Well, 3 in junior. Yeah, no, 2 in junior college. 2 at Washington. Now he'll be playing his 5th year of college football at the University of North Carolina. He is very familiar with the defense because he played under Steve Belichick when Steve Belichick was the defensive coordinator at Washington. And the last 2 seasons with the Huskies, he had 2 interceptions, 16 pass breakups, 69 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble over the last 2 years. And his best game came in 2024 when he recorded a career-high 8 tackles with a forced fumble and a pass breakup at Oregon last season. And he was also all Big Ten. He was also all Big Ten honorable mention selection last season as well. Then that's one corner, right? And he was also media days as well. So that lets you know how highly thought of he is in the program. But then you have Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen will be the starting corner on the opposite Thaddeus Dixon. He will be a 3-year starter for UNC. He's played over 1,800 snaps, 101 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and 17 pass breakups throughout his career. And last season, he had 36 tackles, a tackle for a loss, 2 interceptions, and 6 pass breakups. You also have Ty Adams. Ty Adams is, even though he won't start, he'll definitely be in the rotation. Retro sophomore, 5'11", 180 pounds. Played 128 snaps last season over 5 games, so he's a pretty experienced player. So he's got his feet wet a little bit. Maybe not as experienced as some of the guys I'm about to mention, but he has gotten his feet wet, and I think he will contribute to the Tar Heels defense this year. At nickelback, I think you can see anybody at nickelback. I think it's going to be between Gavin Gibson and Caleb Cost. I think if one plays nickelback, the other will play strong safety. I mean, they're basically the same position, maybe a little bit more, maybe just a little bit different responsibilities, but they kind of have the same idea. Maybe the strong safety sometimes plays a little bit deeper than the nickelback. And nickelback's basically just a cornerback slash safety hybrid, or even a linebacker hybrid, depending on the program. But at North Carolina, I know, the nickelbacks or defensive backs are just another safety. But Caleb Cost started all 13 games last season, led the team with 836 defensive snaps at the nickel slash star position, 69 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, half a sack, 2 interceptions, and 6 pass breakups. He does need to become a little bit of a better tackler, right? He had an 18.6% missed tackle rate, which isn't very good. But I think you can improve there, especially with Steve Belichick being the defensive coordinator now, and I think you have a little bit better defensive coaching than you did the year before. And if you look at some of the games, he had 5 games where he had multiple missed tackles. Hopefully, he can cut that down, and I think he will, just because you just have a better defensive coaching staff than you did the year before. Gavin Gibson, right? I think that's the guy who could start at nickelback or safety depending on where the coaches need him. And I think that's the great thing about this defensive backfield is that it's a very versatile defensive backfield, right? And that's something that we know that Steve Belichick likes. We know that Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick, father and son. I mean, kind of general same ideas there. But they like versatility, and Gavin Gibson and Caleb Koss are both very versatile, especially Gavin Gibson. I mean, in his 630 snaps, he played in 5 different areas of the field. He played 370 of the snaps at slot corner. He played 179 snaps in the box, 49 on the line of scrimmage, 17 at wide corner, and 15 at free safety. So he's a very versatile defensive back. And he often was used as a blitzer off the edge. So he's a very effective pass rusher. But in 13 games last season, 52 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, one of which was returned for a touchdown, a forced fumble, and 3 pass breakups. And then the last but not least, you have Will Hardy, a guy who has been a rotational player, the last 2 or 3 seasons, and has finally earned his spot as a starter on the defense. He was also a guy who represented UNC at the ACC kickoff of the 2. By the way, you want to know how highly thought of this group is? 2 of the guys in the same position group were at media days. Oftentimes, you see one representative of that position group. You saw 2. So that just shows you how good this defensive backfield can be. And Will Hardy, he's been a rotation player. Like I said, he's been a rotation player the last 3 years, and will be battling for a starting job. But I do think he will be the starter, just because of the amount of experience he has. I mean, even in a rotational role, he's still balled out. And I think that this is somebody that will be a starter this season. Obviously, Bill Belichick really likes him. He was at media days. And he's more of a traditional safety than the 2 guys I just mentioned, with Caleb Koss and Gavin Gibson being more versatile and you can move them anywhere across the field and they will excel. Will Hardy's more of a true traditional free safety. He's an experienced and smart player, as you just said, and then also 34 tackles, a tackle for a loss, an interception, 2 pass breakers, and a forced fumble in 2024. And this was a guy who was a rotational player, so he didn't see the field full time, like a lot of full time stars. He was a rotational player, and he was able to put up that stat line, which shows you how great he can be, even with limited snaps. And I think this defensive backfield will be very interesting going into fall camp, just because we really, this is the first time you get to see him play. Outside of maybe Will Hardy and Marcus Allen. I mean, most of the other guys are really guys who, the other 3 stars were transfers. So you really get to see how this group gels together. I mean, this is a very talented defensive backfield with a lot of experience. I mean, just mentioned Caleb Koss had the most snaps at UNC last season. By the way, that's another guy. I mean, really, and let me rephrase this. Of all the position groups that UNC has, this is the only one where you have multiple starters. Them in the offensive line, where you have multiple starters from last season, and they've all played together, right? The defensive line, really, most of those guys are transfers. Same thing with the linebacker room, right? The running back room, even though they're there last year, they really haven't had much production outside of Davion Goss, and even Davion Goss had limited production, right? So, I mean, out of all the position groups you have on this team, the defensive backs, and outside the offensive line, the defensive backs are really the only ones that kind of played together and played a lot. So that's the good thing. I mean, the only 2 new guys you really have are Gavin Gibson and Thaddeus Dixon. And Thaddeus Dixon knows the defense. He played it last season in Washington. And then Gavin Gibson's a guy where he can adapt, right? He played 5 different areas of the field. So, I mean, this is a guy who can adapt to any of his he can adapt to anything. So, and I think he'd be a key player in Steve Belichick's defense because of that said versatility. And I think this defensive backfield will be very, very good. And I really want to see how these receivers go up against this defense backfield, because I think this will really show you how good the receivers can be if they could do some decent things against this defensive backfield, which I think will be one of the better ones in the ACC. So I think of all the position groups, I think this one interests me the most, because I truly do believe that this is the best one that UNC has going into the 2025 season, if they can all stay healthy, of course. If they can all stay healthy, I think this could be a very, very good business group. But you have to stay healthy, and you also have to prove it, right? The game, on September 1st, which is a month away, that's where you really get to see who are the dogs, who's who. Is this guy the real deal, or is this guy the pretender? I think, it starts fall camp. You really get to see who's who. But then when those games start, when you start seeing other teams that wear different colors than you, you really get to know who the dogs are. And I think that it starts now, but there's no doubt in my mind that I really do believe that the defensive backfield, the secondary, is the best position group that UNC has currently. But that's going to wrap up the show today, guys. I'm your host, Grant Sashray, the lead beat writer here on Tar Heels on SI. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, my last name, first name. And then also make sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Tar Heels on SI. Once again, I'm Grant Sashray. See you guys later. And we're going to have a whole weekend of fall camp recaps. Saturday we're going to have an immediate reaction. So we'll get that uploaded too. And I think it'd be fantastic to see this team up close in person for the first time. I wasn't here during the spring because obviously it was in Louisiana. So I really get to see what this team's all about on Saturday. But anyway, I'll see you guys later. And you guys have a good one.